Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia Jay, and I'm here alongside Terrika Ayala and Terrika Foster-Brasby. Hello, ladies. How y'all doing today?
Doing all right. How you doing, sis?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Terrika, you are rocking the whole look. I see you. I see you.
Always.
But we have so much to talk about. I'm really excited to be here with you ladies today because we have a lot to break down about women's sports. And we're going to start off with an honor. Yesterday it was announced that it was going to be a very special day for a WNBA legend. She's 5-time Olympic gold medalist, 13-time WNBA All-Star, all-time WNBA assist leader, and 4-time WNBA champion. I mean, you know who we're talking about. She's going to be the first player that will be honored by a WNBA franchise, and that's Sue Bird. That was announced yesterday. We're looking forward to that day. It's going to be very special. Terrika, what are your thoughts on this honor that Sue is going to get at Climate Pledge Arena?
You know, I was teasing her on social media. I said, I don't usually share my birthday with a lot of people, but in this particular situation, I will allow her being celebrated on August 17th. I mean, Sue has really done almost everything that you can think of in women's basketball and so well deserved. I think what she continues to do is pour into the game, and that in itself is also worthy of being recognized. I think if there's no better player to kind of kick off being honored with a statue by their former team. So I'm here for this. I absolutely love it. And I know that it's going to be a spectacle. I hope to be able to get to Seattle, but I won't. I'll be working my own game. But yeah, great honor to me.
It's a fantastic honor. Yeah, I was just going to say it's a fantastic honor. I mean, we know that the Seattle community loves Sue Bird. She loves them right back. She talks a lot about growing up within her queer identity, within obviously her basketball legacy that she has left there. Even though New York did try to, it seemed like it was pretty close that she might have gone to New York for a minute, but that's how much the Emerald City means to her. If you look at also what Climate Pledge Arena has been able to do in revitalizing really that space. And Sue Bird was able to stay with Seattle as they moved into Climate Pledge Arena, formerly Key Arena, and to see that area now not only have Lenny Wilkins Way, and Sue Bird also has a street named after her in that area, but to have a statue, I think that is fantastic. And I can't wait to see it. I also will not be in Seattle for that particular moment, but we'll have moments to get to CPA as it's known a little bit later. And we got to see, you know, I hope they do sis right. You know,
right. We don't want the little mini statue. Like, get a nice depiction of her.
Yeah, definitely do right by Sue. Do right by Sue. As a girl who is from Portland, Oregon, I grew up watching Sue Bird on every single level, and I cannot wait to see her honored with this statue. I too will not be there, but I'm definitely going to stop by and see it someday. But from one honor to another honor, the All-Star starters were announced, and it got the internet buzzing on many, many levels. You see that it's definitely a star-studded list from Paige Beckers to Napheesa Collier to Satou Sabally, and the list goes on and on. You see it right here. But a lot of people were talking about that there were some snubs, that there were some people that were left out. And Terrika, I want to start with you. Do you think that there should be somebody else on this list that isn't there?
You know, first I'll say that this is a pretty solid list. I think these are key contributors that we've seen in the WNBA. You also have to add in that, players like Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark, they are really bringing along a lot of people who maybe haven't always been tapped into women's basketball at the college level and now in the WNBA. As far as snubs, listen. And I think, Terrika, we might not agree on baseball, but I think she got me on this one here. When is the WNBA going to put some respect on AT? Okay. I mean, listen, this is a player. She's known as the engine for a reason. She is an absolute just beast mode. It doesn't even begin to describe. And she anchors any club that she's on. We've seen that with Phoenix as well. If you want to say maybe she got a little bit of a knock because of injury, but even when coming back from injury, Terrika, I would say that she was still playing phenomenally. And, that's just in the front court. I think there's probably probably also a guard, maybe in the Emerald City playing at Climate Pledge Arena, that we also might need to put some respect on her name as well.
You are 100% correct. And that was Skylar Diggins. I am not surprised, but at the same time, surprised, right? I understand that there's only 4 guards that can be selected as it relates to who you can or can't put in on your all-star ballot. So it is difficult to figure out who to place where, but I think it's worthy of noting that Skylar Diggins has, honestly been one of the reasons that this Seattle team has continued to play at the level that it's played. She was averaging around 18.9 points per game. She was shooting over 45%, over 42% from 3. She was 4th in the WNBA in assists. Like, to me, it just feels like when you're looking at not only this season, but just how she has continued to play alongside Nneka Ogwumike and what she means to that Seattle team at this point, it felt like she definitely could have been someone that would have received a starting position.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of those. And I just also wanted to add Brittany Sykes and Kayla Thornton to that. They're both having career seasons. They're both leading their clubs in ways, with the growth that they're having. It's just phenomenal. They're taking care of the court on both ends. They're both people that I think, both players rather, that I think should be on the team. Whether it be reserves or whatnot, but I would love to see them on this starter list as well. So those are 2 names that I wanted to throw out there. Now, really quick, before we kind of wrap up this conversation, we talked about all-star starters, and one of them is Satou Sabally, and she had something to say that we all need to listen to. So let's take a look.
I think we can focus on our players in the union. We got a proposal from the league, which was honestly a slap in the face. And I think we really have to put an emphasis on the players that are in our league right now. But I love to see the league growing. I think, adding these teams in Philly and Detroit, like, that's how amazing is that the league can grow. But how cool would it also be to have, like, a little bit expansion on the rosters? Like, let's focus on the teams that have everything set up right now, and maybe focus on the teams also that find excuses continuously to lack investment into their players before we focus on adding more to the grain of people that can't really be sustained.
Now, I definitely want to react to this, and we'll have conversation about this, but let's hold on for just a moment, because in our next segment, we're going to be doing something new that's called Make Your Case. And we're going to be talking exactly what she was talking about in this clip. And that is, like, are we going to focus on expanding rosters over the number of teams? Like, which one should we focus on? It's a conversation that needs to be had. Definitely one that Satou alluded to right there in that clip that we saw. And so when we come back, we are going to make our case on that. So stay right there, because we have a lot to talk about right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. Welcome back to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia Jay, and I'm here with my girls, Terrika Ayala and Terrika Foster-Brasby. And we heard a clip, from Satou Sabally right before the break that we definitely need to talk about. She had a lot to say about the CBA. She also had a lot to say about rosters expansion. Terrika, I just want to, what are your thoughts on what Satou had to say, and do you agree with her?
Well, I mean, I'll start briefly with the collective bargaining agreement. We know that, as the WNBPA has put out with their slogan, it's business. They really want to see a comprehensive collective bargaining agreement, which starts with transparency, and salaries are a high priority. I think also when you think about expansion, this is a conversation that a lot of us in media and certainly the players have been having. What is the right move? What is the right balance? Because we know that the schedule has been expanded. The playoff schedule has changed. Not only do you now have the lower seed in the first round guaranteed to get at least one home game, but the finals is going to 7 games. Not to mention that, again, it's a 44 game season, which is which is a longer season. Now you throw in a Commissioner's Cup. So I think there is something to be said about expanding the roster size, Terrika, and not just the expansion teams, because the argument is both can obviously give you more player spots, but one keeps the status quo as is with as far as how many roster spots you have per team. And the other potentially gives you a little bit more flexibility with, as I mentioned, a longer season and a little bit of a change in how we're seeing the postseason in particular.
Yeah, I was one for a very long time who felt like roster expansion was something that was necessary. And I definitely do still think roster expansion is an important key factor that needs to be considered to be prioritized as the league continues to grow. But I think I'm also starting to understand how roster expansion can happen with potentially growing the league through more franchises. I think of a player like Deja Kelly, for example, because one thing that also comes to mind when you talk about roster expansion is you think about player development, right? The WNBA doesn't have a G League. It doesn't have an opportunity for players who want to eventually get to the WNBA, or maybe players who are drafted but are not kept by a team. There is no place for them to go to continue to work, to continue to get better. There's no pool for them to be pulled from, when injuries occur or when hardship contracts are needed. They kind of have to find and figure those things out on their own. So when I think about roster expansion, yes, we do get people an opportunity to add more players to their teams, but will those players play? Like, does it benefit the player to add 3 more spots if those 3 additional players are going to take up space on the bench when they could be playing somewhere else? And that is kind of why I understand the thought process behind expanding your roster through expanding your franchises. Now, a player like Deja Kelly, who could absolutely be on someone's WNBA team right now, not only has a chance to have a roster spot, but has a chance to start, but has a chance to actually play and actually get better and actually develop their skill set. You have a place where you can start to bring in, I think of another player like Letitia Amir. And many of us were like, how in the world did she get cut from the Valkyries, right? But if she had been picked up for another team, what would she have been doing? Again, probably sitting on somebody's bench versus having the opportunity to showcase the skill set that she has that makes her an amazing player, that she eventually ended up doing with Golden State again anyway. So the point is, I think that it is certainly something to consider when it comes to adding additional roster spots, because injuries happen, to your point, Erica, with the season being longer, when you consider FIBA breaks that they'll have to take, Olympic breaks that they'll have to take throughout the season. I mean, I even heard from the commissioner that it's possible that the season may be extending well into November in the coming years because of the breaks that they have to take for international play. So it is important to ensure that bodies are in the right spot, that people are being healthy, that people are really considering rotations so that they can have a full 12 team. But I don't think it always benefits an up and coming player that gets to sit to say, yes, I'm a WNBA player, I am on a roster, but I don't play. I ain't really doing much. I ain't really getting better because I'm not really getting time, right? So I think it's a way for us to be able to do both.
All great points. I think when I look at expansion, I'm excited about it. Obviously, the league needs it, and it should have happened, a long time ago. I'm glad that it's here. But my concern is it happening too fast? Do we have the things in place that are going to make sure that these teams have the success? We see the success of the Valkyries, but I'm not saying all of it. I want to give credit where credit is due. They've done a lot of hard work to bring that expansion team to fruition, but they also had like a built-in audience. These fans have been wanting that team for years. And not to say that these other markets don't, but there are so many different factors that go into having a team. Like, you can't just say, hey, we're going to start one. There's a lot that goes into it. And so when I look at kind of how fast all of these teams are going, that is my concern. And I think even an indicator of that would be in Portland. There's a lot going on with that franchise. And again, I said I was from Portland. It makes me a little bit sad because I want that franchise to thrive and grow, but there's some things that are happening there. So when you look at that, should there be a concern, Erica, about the league growing too fast?
You both honestly have brought up some really interesting and fascinating points. And in some ways, I almost want to can we go back in time and get in that Satu Sabali scrum? Because again, thinking about what the collective bargaining agreement and what we've heard, at least from the Players Association, what they're trying to do, its business is, from what I understand, also about, again, transparency. Now that we are seeing interest, are people reaching out to the Players Association when they're putting in bids? Should that be more formal, informal? What are the standards that we're seeing across the league? I think if you look at free agency, Alicia, right, we've seen players be very vocal when making moves. We were talking about Alyssa Thomas making moves away from specific franchises because it just got to the point where they weren't effectively keeping up with the aces or, what's happening at Barclays Center. We have Phoenix that now has new facilities. And so I think that when you talk about are things happening too fast, I think you can make a case for that. But also, are we maybe seeing that there are things that needed to be taken care of sooner than now when you have all of this interest that should have been regulated in some way through the collective bargaining agreement, through league standards, that now it's kind of showing its face? I think also if you talk about personnel, that's another thing that, as Terrika was talking about, maybe we go expansion for teams versus roster. Well, maybe some of that has to do with what kind of staff you can carry, because now we have a situation where we've seen, again, Alyssa Thomas has been out. Jonquel Jones is out. Caitlin Clark missing time. These are key players for their franchise. And then you have players that are stepping up. I think, Ari McDonald is a perfect example, and she's a consummate pro, and she was able to get integrated. But imagine if Indiana could have kept her on longer than just that 7-day hardship. It's not that back and forth, people coming in and out of a culture, but she was there from the beginning. And so while I can understand there are times where we're seeing that players are not we're seeing that teams are not utilizing their full bench. I'll go back to the 23 finals, the 24 finals, and even what we're seeing now. The teams that are competing, it's not just because they have former or future MVPs. It's not because they have Hall of Fame coaches, or not only because they have Hall of Fame coaches. It's not just because their general managers are going internationally to scout. It's also because the whole collective of that franchise, including the roster itself, is leaning into depth. We're seeing the aces struggle, and I think a part of that is because they don't have and maybe have not utilized their depth, particularly on the front court. That leaves A'ja Wilson very vulnerable and susceptible to burnout, to injury. And so I think all of these things really, for me, Alicia, are related. Like, how are we ensuring that as the league is expanding, more eyes, more business, more support and sponsorship and partnership and investment is coming in, that again, the standard is not only rising for the player experience, the executive experience, the fan experience, but that we're also setting parameters and standards so that it's not just the folks with the money that are competing, but as they say, the rising tide should lift all boats. And when is that going to start to be integrated from jump so that there are expectations and standards that new teams have to meet?
Yeah, I piggyback off of a lot of what Erica said, and I actually would answer a question with a question, and that is, at what point, or shall I say, whose standard is the standard, right? And the reason why I say that is because, you have for a long time, I look at a team like the Minnesota Lynx, who has had a relationship with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have always played in an arena, and they've always been in an environment where their partner with the NBA has been, we are one. We're going to treat our women the same way that we would treat our men. We're going to treat this franchise the same way that we would treat our NBA franchise. And I think investment, I look at Golden State again as a team that you could see from the very beginning that Joe Lacob was serious about the investment that he was going to place. So when I look at whether or not we are expanding too fast, I don't think it has anything to do with the timeline. I think it has everything to do with ensuring you are selecting the type of ownership groups that you know and can trust, can absolutely offer the investment and actually stick to it. Are we vetting our ownership groups so that they are bringing exactly what is seen and necessary to ensure success? Because the fans are going to show up. They've been there. The fans are going to do their part. Ownership has not always done theirs. And then I look at a team like, for example, Portland and Toronto, which are the next two that are coming in. Let's be clear. Toronto didn't share their information, their team name and all of that because they were ready to launch it and roll it out. It leaked. It leaked. People saw it and it leaked. And at that point, it was, well, since it's already out here, we've got to move forward with it. That to me is not an issue because the team did something. It leaked. People are where they are doing what they're doing. I look at Portland in this situation that was going on with their team president. I, again, don't see that as a league issue. Like the league doesn't hire or fire team presidents. That's what's going on with your ownership group. That's an ownership group situation that y'all need to figure out and figure it out fairly quickly. And so to me, the league's responsibility in this situation to ensure that by expanding, they are doing right by their players and they're doing right by the fans and they're doing right by the league itself is to ensure they are selecting locations and ownership groups that are seriously vetted and are up to the task that is required to really make a franchise successful. It is, if it's just about I'm here today because I want to do it today and that's it, it won't be successful no matter how much money you have. You've got to pick the right people.
And I just have a real quick question. Like, Terrika, is it a leak though if it's placed on the league website as a drop down?
That's what I'm saying. To me, it seems like a person kind of messed up. Honestly, it was somebody messed up and Toronto had to figure out what to do with it.
They were like, well, I guess we got to go with it now. It's like getting on the same page. I think, we got to get on the same page.
Yep.
Well, people definitely make mistakes, but we're hoping that the roster expansion isn't a mistake, especially when it comes to the players, their well-being, their health, the schedule, everything. There's just so many aspects of it. I mean, we could talk about this all day, but we definitely just want to make sure that the players are protected on every level when it comes to a lot of things in this league. But when it comes to expansion, just thinking about the movement of everything when you're adding teams and how it affects them. So we're definitely going to be talking about this more. This is not the last time. This is one of many that we will be talking about this topic. But what we're going to do coming up next is something that I know that we all love here. And that is a vibe check. So make sure that you stay tuned. Come on back after this break because the vibes are going to be real and we will be talking all about it right here on We Need to Talk Now. Welcome back to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And as promised, we are going to have a little vibe check. Now, this week, there was a lot of movement in the WNBA. You had NaLyssa Smith being traded rather, because she didn't pick it, being traded to Vegas. And then, so she went from the Wings to Vegas. Vanloo, she chose to forego celebrating. I mean, this kind of blows my mind, but with Belgium after winning the chip at the Eurobasket. So she chose to forego that, fly all the way back about 18 hours. And as soon as she touched down, she found out that she was waived by the Valkyries. And so with that, there was a lot, obviously, of conversation. I mean, how could you not talk about something like that? And, we just want to do a vibe check on if the teams, the WNBA teams, need to change the way that they move players, Terrika. What are your thoughts on that?
So I got a few thoughts on this, right? So to be very frank, we understand that the WNBA is like any other sport. It is a business. And so, yes, there are going to be times where you are going to be waived, where you are going to be traded, where you are going to be moved. We get that. But I do think there should be some type of process that should be outlined for everyone that will ensure that players are notified first before, like, finding out that you've been traded while you're on a plane or that you've been cut while you're on a plane. I just don't understand that. And I get it, right? And we're all media. Media wants to be first. Some folks want to like drop things first, get things out there first, want to have the breaking story. And there isn't much you can do as it relates to reporters kind of getting the stuff out, right? Like that just is part of the game. But as it relates to the relationship between the team and the player, there is no reason that someone should be finding that information out first from social media or from seeing a graphic or from anything like that. There has to be some way that players can ensure that they are getting this information first, or at least as soon as it's happening, before, you know, kind of finding out in a very devastating way.
I mean, I agree 100%. And this is something that we see throughout sports. Unfortunately, people finding out on social media that they've been traded, feeling like, or knowing and stating that there was no communication from their respective team. My beloved New York Metropolitans, when Wilmer Flores was still on the team, he's on third base and is getting heckled from someone sitting in the stands that he's been traded, and he had an emotional reaction to that. You know, that's the human side. You want to talk about the business side. These are still people. There's a human element of this. And when you think of an athlete, I often use the term warrior, right? To talk about an athlete. We ask athletes to quite literally put their bodies on the line, which takes a lot of mental fortitude. And they invest so much, they pour so much into being successful in their respective sport. And yes, the emotional side, when you feel that that's not reciprocated by way of, as we mentioned a little earlier, perhaps a lack of communication, that can be downright devastating. Not to mention, logistically speaking, there's a lot that you have to handle and figure out how you're going to get to your next place. In the case of NaLyssa Smith, or in the case of Julie Vanloo, figure out how you're going to get back now that there's not any job security anymore. And oh my goodness, missing a celebration, that's really tough. And I think for me, we see other leagues where there are no trade clauses, and no trade is a little bit different, I think, from this conversation, but it definitely speaks to the broader conversation, I think, Alicia, of player autonomy. But we also have the NWSL that with the Players Association and the league, they were like, no, we're not doing this. There are no trades going through until they have been communicated, not just communicated to the player, but approved by the player. I don't know. Is there a medium between a happy medium, I should say, between what we're seeing now? In this case, we're talking about the WNBA and what we see in the NWSL, where it's like, we're not going nowhere until we sign on the dotted line. What is the in-between? What is right and quote unquote fair, thinking about the players, but of course also the business, and that business moves have to be made. I don't really know, but this is tough. This is gut wrenching, excuse me, to see and to hear from the players' perspective.
You know,
it is. And I think,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alicia.
Go ahead, Terrika. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it reminds me a lot of MLB, right? Where MLB does have no trade clauses, right? But the contracts and the provision of the contract, it works very differently. And there may be some way to kind of model that, like it, again, for when I think about the way the MLB has their structure, it's basically, if it's a complete no trade clause, it's like I can veto to any team. If it's not a team that I want to go to, I don't go there. But for example, if it's like a partial no trade clause, it's these particular teams. Like if you want to trade me,
same in hockey.
But anywhere else, not so much. But then they also have what's considered like a 10-5 rule. And that might be something that the WNBA can consider, where if you have 10 years or more of service, then you have the ability, and you've spent 5 years with the same team, then you have the ability to be more autonomous with where your moves are, versus, you know, someone like, I've only been with this team for 2 or 3 years. I don't really get a say so as to, what happens and what business moves. But the reason why I bring all of that up is because I think the difference between the WNBA and these other leagues is leverage, right? They have more money, and usually no trade clauses are placed into a contract as a way to bring a player to ensure that this team can grab a player that they believe have high value. It is a leverage play for a player. I don't know if the WNBA has allowed their players to have that much leverage just because they don't have the money just yet to support a no trade clause type system. But that could potentially change because of the new media deal, the new franchises that are coming, the money that's starting to be generated that the players are currently fighting for in the CBA. So I could see something like that changing in the future.
And I think that it should. That's one thing across sports, when it involves a trade, it's always been something that I just didn't like. I worked for the Golden State Warriors for 13 seasons, and there were players that were traded in the middle of games, and their whole families were just totally displaced. The city that they've been living in, everything that was happening in their life was completely changed in an instant. And so, yes, there's a lot that can be done when it comes to trades and movement of players across the board, and certainly in the WNBA. And I definitely look forward to seeing how they address it in the new CBA, because it's been a point of conversation. And obviously we saw Satu's comments earlier. They have a lot that they're fighting for. And I think that's probably in there, just surmising, but definitely something that we will continue to talk about. And don't go anywhere, because when we continue our conversation, we're going to get into a little bit of women's soccer. We're celebrating a big national team win, and we're going to talk all about it right here when we return on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. Welcome back to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And listen, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to soccer, because there was a monumental moment for the U.S. women's national team on Sunday against Ireland. The team recorded its 600th win, which 600 wins, wow, that is just, I can't even wrap my head around that, but it's their 600th win in their 40-year history. Erica, when you see this moment, how cool is it? Like, how cool is it to reach 600 wins for this national team?
I mean, it's monumental. We have known for a really long time that U.S. women's soccer has been a dominant force, to the point where in some circles, when you say U.S. women's national team, people immediately think soccer, even though I'm just going to put it out there. We've got a national team for hockey. We've got a national team for basketball. Yeah. But that's how synonymous that phrase is with soccer, because of the winning they've done at World Cup, winning that they've done in Olympics, and also while waging very serious conversations about women in sports and women in sports and the workforce, and what that looks like as far as equitable versus equal pay. This has been a team that has carried the banner for a lot of what we see, a lot of movements that came before them, but being able to push those conversations in different directions, for better or worse. The way that the team looks, how they're comprised, the sport that they play, allowed for a really long time for conversations around equal pay and equitable circumstances to reach new heights and new levels. So there's that history. And knowing that you're carrying all of that while also dominating on the pitch, that's like, come on, find you a woman who can do it all. Oh, that's the women's national team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny that you say when you think U.S. Women's national team, the first thing that you think of is women's soccer. And I think that speaks to us when we talk about standard and we talk about a level of success. Like, that is a standard. If you were to Google USWNT, the first thing that's going to pop up is the women's national soccer team. Again, it just continues to reiterate that this team has continued to bring in, I mean, these are not the same national team players that started this entire thing. This is not the same team that started, win number one. So not only is it evolving, but it's continuing to evolve, and the talent that continues to play alongside it is evolving. And they all tend to keep that same level of standard, that same excellence that has been synonymous with this team. So, listen, I will be the first to tell you that I am not the strongest soccer mind and analysis in the world, but I know greatness when I see it. And that is the U.S. women's national team. So kudos to them.
Yes, kudos to them and everything that they have done and continue to do. And just the trails that they blazed for all women in sports has just absolutely been phenomenal, and something that will continue to change what all women are doing in sports as well. Man, we've had so much to talk about, so many great moments, and we're going to talk about a moment that is coming up for us right here on CBS, and that is a big matchup between the Seattle Storm and the New York Liberty. And just a reminder, when you are listening to us right now, you're going to be able to listen to us every week on our YouTube page. I mean, we're going to be on these shows as well, but make sure that you're tapped in, subscribed, and you're going to get all the breakdowns, all the things we're talking about today. So, don't just watch the show and not be tapped in. Make sure that you're on social, on YouTube, and all of those things, so we can continue to talk about women's sports right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. Come back. We're going to be talking about this big game coming up. Welcome back to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. And we've had a great show, but we could not leave this show without talking about a huge game that is happening coming up with the New York Liberty versus the Seattle Storm. That will take place on Sunday, July 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBS. It'll be on CBS, rather.
Yeah, this game on CBS is going to be an exciting matchup between New York and Seattle. We know that the New York Liberty have been struggling, I would say, without Jonquel Jones, and the Seattle Storm have been figuring some things out. I think making some adjustments to that starting roster with Erica Wheeler, I think really stepping up and playing a fantastic role. We've already talked about Skylar Diggins, Nneka Ogwumike, you know what I'm saying? But I think this is going to be a good litmus test. You also have the New York Liberty. They will get Leonie Fevish back, who was also away with national team duties. So I do think that will make a difference when it comes to how this New York Liberty squad is able to play. But, when you look at what we see here, the New York Liberty have fallen, if you can even say, Terrika, to third overall. But I think it's noticeable. It's been noticeable that things like rebounding, turnovers have been a little bit of a problem. And I think that shows, Terrika, how much even just getting touches to Jonquel Jones can impact this team. But let's have you talk a little bit from the Seattle Storm perspective. I mean, who do you see really balling out, and what is the difference right now for a Seattle Storm team in fifth place and a game back from Atlanta?
Yeah, one thing that I have loved about this Seattle team is that no matter who they're playing or what they're playing, it can be somebody different every time, right? I love to see so far the development of Dominique Malonga. And you and I both, Erica, had an opportunity to kind of talk to her on draft day and kind of see how she wanted to be productive to this team. She's absolutely trying to be all of that, right? I feel like she's working alongside Ezzy and getting her footing together, understanding her relation to the basket, and really trying trying to post up. And that has been great for them as a rookie player. But the X factor to me in this matchup has to be Gabby Williams. I feel like Gabby Williams is the player that is not talked about enough because of her versatility and everything that she's able to do. As much as she can control the boards, she can also be that guard for you that knows how to run the ball up and down the court. She can help control the pace. She can work alongside of Skylar Diggins. To me, she is important. And why? It's because there is no Jonquel Jones. Because there is no Jonquel Jones to control the inside for New York, Gabby Williams can be that X factor that can draw a defender anywhere. She can open it up for Nneka inside. She can open it up for Skylar to take better outside shots. And again, Dominique and Ezzy both have an opportunity to kind of fill in the gaps in the paint, which would be a one-on-one matchup with either Breanna Stewart or it could be Kennedy Burke, whoever it is that they'll be putting in at that position, and Niara Sabally at that time. I do think defensively is where I want to see Seattle turn it up a notch. Now that New York is adding Leo back, they are adding an additional threat. They're adding an additional shooter, and Leo knows exactly what it means to be a winner. So I do want to see them to kind of up their game a bit on the defensive end, which shouldn't be an issue considering that Nneka Ogwumike has been one of the strongest defenders her entire career. And Ezzy Magbagor, again, has, in my estimation, I don't know why she has not yet been voted a defensive player of the year because of how she continues to defend day in, day out, and own it in the paint. So I really hope that Gabby shows up on Sunday, because to me, she is the X factor for this Seattle team that's really trying to stay the pace from a standing perspective.
You know, and Alicia, I already mentioned Leonie Fibish, but I want to ask you maybe about another player that has ties to the Bay Area, because I know you always be holding the Bay down. But, you know, Sabrina Ionescu has been a little bit injured. I mean, I don't know. Does that injury also impact the New York Liberty? I think it could. Does Leo kind of erase some of those things? But when you have a player like Sabrina Ionescu, maybe not shooting the way she wants, like, how do you think that could impact a New York squad?
I mean, anytime you have Sabrina that may be injured or not as effective, it's going to impact your team. I mean, she's one of the integral parts of the team. But I did see her talking a little bit about what kind of they're going through right now with injury and all of that. And she very much said, hey, there is stuff that's happening, but we're going to be composed. We're not going to freak out. I'm just kind of saying it in my own words, but she was saying that the team is composed during the time that they're going through these little transitions that they're, having to kind of circumvent. And so, and I could say that for both teams, really. I was at the arena when they played the Valkyries. I was at that game. It was my first Valks game, as a matter of fact. And it was kind of hard to watch because, they beat them at Valhalla for sure. But I didn't see a team that was freaking out. I didn't see a team that didn't know that they could be really good and that they could work through these things. And I think both of these teams are doing that right now. And that's why I'm really excited to watch them play. Really quickly, who do you have winning this game?
Oh, I knew this question was coming, right? Like in my head, I said, Alicia is going to ask us for a prediction. And I didn't have one, and I still don't. Although I'm going to go on, a part of me feels like they're playing this game in Barclays, right? And so I'm obviously going to give, or at least I feel that home court advantage. The atmosphere in Barclays is just different. It is difficult to win in New York. And so because of that alone makes me want to say that this could be a matchup that New York could probably win. But I also feel like Erica is going to say that New York is going to win. So to cause chaos and just to be opposite of Erica, I am going to pick Seattle.
Wow. Okay, I will say, if there's a team that's going to make me feel some kind of way about being from New York, it's Seattle. Like, listen, I got my heart in Seattle for a lot of different things that I cover, including hockey. So, and I know these two teams pretty well. I think that you have two teams that are looking to get back into the win column. The X factor for me is definitely Leonie Fibish for New York. And that's where I would agree with you 100%, Terrika. Yeah. However, if we see a Seattle Storm team that has improved defensively and really locks down and has that be the surge for their offense, New York could be in some trouble.
Yeah.
Well, listen, definitely looking forward to that game. That's Sunday, July 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. And thank you so much for being here, Erica and Terrika. And thank you, everyone, for watching us right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.